All right. So I am going to babble just for a couple minutes if you're clicking in because I just went impromptu live. And it takes a little bit for people to dial in and watch. But if you're tuning in, as you can see at the bottom of my screen, what I'm going to talk about on this live stream is what happens to the mortgage industry, and in particular originators, when technology in the loan manufacturing process gets to a point where you're pushing a button and getting a clear to close. And the reason why I'm talking about this subject, and I'm going to try to check out my comments to make sure I see anyone comments. The reason why I'm talking about this is the technology is now coming at a pace probably faster than many of us recognize. We read recently at Loan Depot just rolled out a technology called Mellow Clear. The premise of it is day one certainty. The idea was great. Use a piece of technology to validate someone's income and employment automatically. So clearing underwriting conditions without having human labor participate in that process. The problem with that is the web of data to get to that automated underwriting condition being cleared caused day one certainty, let's just say, not to work nearly as often. And so technology has to find an alternative to it. And what Mellow Clear does is, if day one certainty misses and the technology doesn't get income and employment cleared as an underwriting condition, the consumer will then upload their pay stub W-2s, whether they do the picture, the scan, or digitally upload. And what we can now have through Mellow Clear is technology that's then going to go read and recognize, hey, that's pay. That's asset information. So the technology is now doing what our openers would do. And then it's scraping the data off of that pay stub and W-2 and clearing income and employment and asset information as underwriting conditions. Meaning the originator doesn't need to review the documentation, the opener, the processor, the underwriter, all of that is done. And we're in the early stages of it. We've already got running through Mellow Clear over 10,000 conditional approvals at the push of a button. Now, a conditional approval is much different than a clear to close, but you can see how this story goes. Now, I'm going to start talking about really what the subject matter is in case there's actually people that have dialed into this. Is when we get to that environment of push button, get clear to close, because again, it's going to happen. You're going to see it come in 2021 at some organizations with some percentage of our loan volume. What does that impact have on us as originators, and how should we prepare for it? The first thing I'm going to say is and I even mentioned this in one of my posts before, I read an article that was talking about what Amazon did when they first rolled out the Kindle. And if you guys are familiar with the Kindle is their kind of tablet that they created so you could read a book on a tablet. So you don't need to keep buying a tablet or keep buying books and opening up the binder and everything else. And look at that, Mr. Kelsey, it's good to see you, man. You don't need to keep buying books. You just download the book onto the tablet and away that you go. And what they had talked about with this creation of Kindle was, at the time, the number one revenue generator for Amazon was selling books, like by far and away. Like that's where Amazon made money. They didn't have Amazon Cloud. They weren't giving us our shampoo. They weren't delivering groceries. They were selling books. And yet Bezos had said, I want to cannibalize that business and I want to do digital books. And so they went out and they spent a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of engineering resources to prepare for what they saw was the future state. They knew the consumer was going to go digital for, well, everything like we are today, with video, with audio, with shopping, with getting food. And so they began to work on their future state, even though they were making most of their revenue on the current state. And I think of the mortgage industry right now and what originators are going through. There isn't an originator worth their salt that hasn't broken a record this year. It is what it is. Every human being. I talked to a guy yesterday, historical $30 million producer. He goes, last week I took 5 million in applications. Like, we are busting records. So which means is, as originators, we're Amazon right now. We are making our hay focused on one thing and one thing only, selling books in our case, getting a lot of mortgages through refinances and purchases and just focused on that. But what happens when that light switch flips on? And we do go into a push button, get mortgage, or at least push button, get clear to close environment. If you haven't used the time today to plan for that, you're going to get caught off guard. Because when push button get clear to close happens, there is a distinct thing that's going to change in our business, and that is conversion. Right now, if I get a lead from a realtor and I get that person pre-approved, I'm going to close that deal more times than not, like 80, 90%. That's like the historical norm, right? The MBA, it was over 80% of our pipeline would always convert into a close. Well, when a person gets a push button get clear to close in a purchase environment and on a purchase transaction on day 3, and they're not going to move into their new home until day 30, what happens when they can go down the street, push the same exact button they pushed with you, but they're going to do it because, well, market's changed and they can save an eighth on a rate and they don't need to wait for anything anymore, right? That day is going to come, and what's going to change then is that 80+% application or locked loan to conversion is going to begin to go down. And we're already seeing the impacts of that conversion percentage going down because of other outside sources. We're seeing the advent of people being able to go online and click a button to get rates on refinances through Quicken. That's why Quicken is doing so many refinances. 1 out of every 5 or 1 out of every 6 are done by Quicken or Loan Depot. We're already seeing how with appraisal waivers, it's great for us. We're saving the consumer money, but it's also created a less sticky situation, which means consumers are able to move down the street a little bit easier if they want to. This is just going to pile on to that. And when that happens, again, if you are not prepared, your conversion percentage is going to go aggressively down. I recently saw a post from Chris Medine where he great quote. He goes, "I every single week am going to spend a little bit of time working on my process, not on my activities, but on making my process better." And that's what this live stream is about. Is I'm going to try and summarize some of the concepts that I've been putting out as of late that you guys should be taking at least an hour a week right now, thinking about, even as busy as you are, focusing on your single revenue source like Amazon did with books, and spending an hour a week working on the strategies that you're going to want to have in your business when we get into a push button, get clear to close. And the first one that I'm going to talk about is that network, okay? And what I mean by that network is already we know that in a purchase transaction, when we get a realtor that says, hey, you need to work with this loan officer. This loan officer is great. They're the best. They know the market. Work with them. We already know that that referral is worth its weight in gold. Well, what happens in an environment, a push button, get clear to close, and when you can get to the consumer first, and that lead isn't coming from a realtor already with a warm, kind of like a testimonial, if we will, or a championing of you. Like that is like double whammy low conversion, right? And so what we need to do is go upstream. Is if we get to that consumer first in a low conversion environment and in an environment of push button get clear to close, let's pull that consumer into our network. Which means now as a mortgage professional, what I'm thinking of is how can I have a lot of local friends in a lot of different areas of professional expertise. Think financial advisors, CPAs, electricians, roofers, plumbers. You can fill in the gaps of where I'm going with this. And when you get to that consumer, one of the first things you say is, hey, I assume you probably have a financial advisor or maybe you have an electrician, but just in case you don't have the whole gamut, when you buy a new home, there's a lot that goes into it. And so what I've done here locally is I've spent a lot of time building up one of the strongest networks that I possibly can. And any consumer that I have, I like to introduce them to that network. So what you're creating when you say that, guys, is you're almost giving them a velvet rope type environment. Hey, I'm pulling you in to the VIP club of the best roofers, the best plumbers, the best electricians. And then what you do is you actually introduce this person to that network. Why? Because now what you've done is you've given a direct connect of this consumer to people that are going to champion you. People that are going to say, oh, hey, Bob, it's nice to meet you. Glad to hear that you're working with Shane. He's the best mortgage consultant I've seen in town. Definitely super excited to help you if any electrical needs come up in the future. Like you can manufacture this. Like, for example, guys, little hint on LinkedIn. People around the country, yeah, they do their posts, but then they have little pods. When they post, they say, hey, pod, can you do me a favor? Like my post, comment my post so it boosts it up. Well, that's manufactured comments, but why are they doing that? Because it brings legitimacy to their posts, right? Well, this is doing the same thing except on your mortgage transactions in a local environment. And so if you poll that consumer and say, hey, consumer, do you mind if I give you kind of a connection network of people and professionals that I've put together? No, I don't care. Go ahead. Now, all of a sudden, all those people can, we'll say, script, respond back to that introduction and say, oh, again, Shane is the best. Super glad that you're working with them. Best in this market that I've seen. So creating a network in this future state that you're introducing borrowers to can have a major, major impact on increasing your conversion when you get into that push button, get clear to close, which means it's easy for a consumer to move on. The next one I'm going to talk about is adding value after the mortgage. And the reason I say that is today, if a purchase takes 30 days, you have a lot of milestones to really cement your value to this consumer. And we do that all. Like we really make it a thing when we're taking the application or we're requesting documentation or we're giving weekly statuses or we're sending out milestone text messaging. Like the length of our loan manufacturing process gives us as mortgage professionals an opportunity to really have a lasting impression on this borrower that's going to hopefully cause them to want to come back and work with me, right? Well, what happens when that 30-day cycle goes away? What happens when we now don't have that opportunity to talk about, the getting the documentation or the milestones or what have you? You need to engineer into your business value beyond the mortgage. And the things I think about with that or value after the mortgage. Things that I think about with that is 3 different angles that we need to consider. And I'm going to throw you up, Ed. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Is one, what can we do ourselves? And there are things that I've heard loan officers engineering into their business, such as financial literacy for children. There's a lot of parents out there right now that frankly are looking for ways to educate their kids, especially when it comes to financial literacy. And there's originators around the country that they have a course that they put kids through to teach them about mortgages or maybe the stock market, right? And so imagine taking an application from a borrower and getting a push button, get clear, close. And so you're done in 3 days. And what are you going to do for the next 27 days? Well, one of the things you can sell this family is, hey, by the way, something that I do for all clients that I close a loan for is every month or every other month, I do a financial literacy for kids course where I teach them basics and I make it fun and make it interactive. If you'd be interested in little Billy and Susie, who you're buying this new home for, to go through that course, let me know. Well, what you've just done passive aggressively is you've created a sticky situation. Because if they get that clear to close and they're thinking about maybe going to another lender at some point because they're still 27 days before they close their loan, they might not because, well, they remember that you're building things for their kids. You're building experiences for their kids to hold on to. And guys, that's just one small example. There's client appreciations, there's educations, whatever it is. You need to begin to think about engineering into your business value after the mortgage because that push button, get clear to close is coming. The other angle is you got to look at vendors. Sometimes like inventing the wheel and reinventing the wheel on your own and doing all the engineering, it's tough. There are vendors out there that some of us are not aware of that really have a better approach at client retention. Like many of us have done the old school drip campaign, sending the client gift cards. Of course, I think Surefire, top of mind, is one of them. There's one in particular that I like more because of the conversions that I've seen. One is HomeBot. So what HomeBot does is they, on a monthly basis, after the loan is closed, they send your borrower an email. Okay, it sounds like everything else that we do, but the email is different. In that email, in the subject header, it will have that borrower's name. So in my case, Shane Stanton. And what it says is, hey, Shane Stanton, here is an updated home valuation of your home. And then it has your address in the subject header. So right away, the consumer's eyes are like, oh. And the email, by the way, is coming from you. Then when the borrower opens up the email, what they see inside is a complete breakdown of their home. Not just their mortgage, but their home. And the estimated equity they have in the home, ways that they can use that equity, all kinds of stuff that is educating them on their local community, their home, and the value of their home and what they can do with that equity of that home. Now, this is why I give a special shout out to HomeBot. Typical drip campaigns, think your email campaigns that you're sending out, have roughly a 15 to 20% open rate and roughly a 5 to 10% click rate or engagement rate. HomeBot, with our originators that use them, have an 80% open rate and a 47% engagement rate. In other words, HomeBot has discovered if I create a personalized experience for this borrower, they're going to engage in my marketing because it is personalized and value add. They're going to engage in my marketing more than anything else. So again, guys, going back into, I didn't get a chance to really establish my value to this consumer because the push button clear to close made it really fast. So all the service stuff that I've built into my business has changed. Well, I need to add value in other ways. Vendors are maybe an excellent way to look at. The third angle is what can your company provide you? Companies are getting a little bit more savvy at this. They are creating consumer portals, kind of like HomeBot, this and that. But I'm thinking stuff beyond the simple drip campaigns. For example, and this is not a Loan Depot commercial, but just give an example, Loan Depot has a guarantee where if a consumer comes back to refinance, we cover the cost, cover the all the fees and everything else, creating, again, kind of like a lifetime guarantee on the mortgage that we give you. Again, a little bit of helpful, something to evaluate when you're looking at organizations. So continuing on, we're talking about what happens in an environment when we get a push button, get clear to close. So my 30-day chance of becoming really good friends with my borrowers really gets shrunk to 3 days. And now I'm just holding on for dear life for the rest. What other kinds of things should we be thinking about today to get ready for that state? Just like Amazon did right at the beginning of the stream. They prepared for that future state while they were making money. We're all making money now, but we need to prepare for that future state because it's coming next year, guys. The next thing I think about is brand. And you know, brand is one of those touchy subjects because it's almost overplayed. Like you go to LinkedIn and brand, personal brand, company brand, brand. And a lot of us are like, I don't need brand. You know, it's overplayed. I don't want to do the social media. So I'm gonna give you this example of brand. I was in a conversation just yesterday with somebody, and to be honest with you, I forget what we were talking about, but this point was really kind of funny. I had asked her, the person that I was talking to, I said, so is Apple, would you agree, probably the iPhone, the best phone on the market? And the person goes, well, yeah, it's the best phone. I go, okay, and why do you say that? Well, just I have one and I use it. It's very functional. I go, okay. So let me ask you the next question. When is the last time you've actually picked up a Droid, a Samsung phone, to compare against the iPhone? To actually see how the camera on the Droid or the Samsung works compared to the Apple phone. She goes, I haven't. And so in a kind of a humorous way, my pushback was, so you don't think like technology has changed at all in the last 3-4 years? And we laughed together, and what we kind of uncovered with one another was really what we're following is the brand. The emotion that Apple has instilled upon its user base is that we're better, that we're more in tune with you, that we impact your life. So much so, guys, that when this phone gets done, right, I'm not even going to look at a Samsung. I'm just going to go down and kind of write a passage, give me my new iPhone, please. Just assuming that this phone works best. Brand works, guys. And within brand, you do need to look at brand from two different angles, especially when you're looking at client capture. One is your personal brand. When a consumer does business with you on a local level and they get introduced to you, whether it's through leads or through a referral partner, if they see your brand online because you've engaged in the community, you've added value and everything else, they're inherently going to have this emotion of, I'm working with one of the best in the business because, well, why else would they be on social media all over the place and authentic and adding value? Like, they will stick with you simply because you have built a personal brand online that they're familiar with. And that is going to help them stick with you during the loan process, even though maybe they can go down the street and push that same button to get it clear to close. At the other end, though, guys, I have never really bought into corporate brand and mortgage, and more because other than Quicken, who's doing Super Bowl ads and this and that, none of us at a corporate level have actually created brand. I think that game is going to change. I think you're going to begin to see organizations like Guaranteed Rate. They've started to lean into this a little bit, right? If you're watching baseball at all, they're behind home plate. They've got a baseball stadium named after them. They've got Ty Pennington. Corporate brand is starting to matter. And so you've got to, when you think about how can I create a sticky situation for my consumers when push button, get clear to close, I've given them their product in 3 days in a 30-day cycle on a purchase. What can I do? You've got to have brand. And you can really control the consumer if you work on your personal brand. So something I would think about working, if you aren't doing it now today, is how can you begin to develop a strategy with purpose for personal brand in a go-forward market. The next one is the idea and concept that you need to think about, and I'm going to use recruiting as an example, is having action steps in your process. So every interaction, if you end an interaction with this kind of comment, yeah, okay, great, nice talking to you. Let's try to catch up maybe later on this week or later on next week, so we can talk about whatever stuff we're going to talk about next. Yeah, good luck to you. Because what you just set the stage for was you now need to reach out to the person. You need to schedule something. You're going to chase that person to pull them back in, which mentally at that time, they're away. They've gone away from you. Like they're not interacting with you. They're not feeling your energy. They're not feeling your love. They haven't just received your value, which means you almost need to resell them to pull them back. And so something with purpose that we need to think about engineering into our business, especially again, if I get that clear to close in 3 days, 4 days, seconds, whatever it is, and I need to hold on to this person for the next 30 days, is how can I engineer events in my process with this consumer that I can always be scheduling a next action step. So imagine your day 3, again, this is happening next year, guys, the technology that's coming. I get it clear to close, and I call this consumer and say, hey, by the way, congratulations, want to let you know we are clear to close. You're done. Basically, when you guys are ready to sign your docs, you let us know and we're ready to rock and roll. One thing I want to do, now you've got to close this interaction. One thing I want to do is I'd like to get on the phone with you next week, Tuesday or Wednesday. You let me know. Because something that I always do with my borrowers is we talk about the local marketplace and schools and restaurants or kids' activities, whatever you manufacture. So then that way I can welcome people to the neighborhood and make sure that they're as educated as possible. And since we're done with the mortgage, let's schedule this time so I can get you prepared for what you're moving into. Or maybe that's, let's schedule a time so I can introduce you to your network or whatever it is. But you have to schedule next actions. Why? Because if you don't, and this consumer thinks they are done with the process, again, in an environment where they can push button, clear to close, and go down the street to another lender, they have a chance of you not really being top of mind. They've gone deaf to you, right? Because they're not hearing from you. But if you're in their calendar already, you're in their calendar next Tuesday or next Wednesday, they have, let's just call it a natural kind of emotion of, yeah, I don't want to cheat on this mortgage consultant because they've already given me my clear to close and now I'm in their calendar for next week. They're adding value to me. They're helping me out. God, I don't want to hurt that originator's feelings and cancel that meeting. Like people will stay with you because of that, because they don't want to hurt your feelings, because of loyalty, right? And so something that we need to engineer into our business is a process of next action step. Always have a next action step scheduled with your borrowers. And that action step, guys, is a place, a time, and a purpose. It's not, hey, we'll follow up next week. It is, but before I get off this phone, we're going to know when we're talking, what time we're talking, and what we're talking about next. Engineer that into your business with purpose. Train yourself. End every interaction with the next action. And you will find when we move into this push button, get clear to close, AKA low conversion environment, it's going to have a major impact on your conversion percentage. And then the last thing, guys, that I'm going to talk about this kind of impromptu live stream is more of an overarching feeling, philosophy. And that is showing that you genuinely care. And that one seems obvious. But what happens is, especially in high volume markets, we really process our business out. We really systemize it. It's almost, it's really not become a conveyor belt. Well, it's called a conveyor belt. We do this and then that and this and that and this and that and this and that. And what happens is we get working the process so diligently, we don't take a step back to say, you know what? How can I let this person know that I care? And as simple as this sounds, something that you should purposely, with purpose, add to your business And I'm not a big time blocker, but time block into your calendar 30 to 60 minutes every single week to do nothing but look at your pipeline of clients, your pipeline of referral partners, your pipeline of past clients. And go name by name by name and ask yourself this question. What can I do? Or when is the last time I've done something to show this person that I care? Sometimes, guys, a simple text message saying, hey, what's going on? I was thinking of you. I hope you're well, right? That goes a long way. Some cases, it's sending an impromptu gift card. Recently, not to get personal, my mother passed. And a couple mortgage professionals, I'll just call them by name because they're great guys, John Overfelt and Corey Bauer, they sent me a gift card when they heard that my mom passed. Now, these are guys I've never worked with before. These are guys that I've tried to recruit in the past and failed. I don't think I've added value to these guys, and yet they showed that they cared. Do you think that these guys will always be in the back of my mind? Do you think that I will always feel that I owe these two guys? Yeah, because they didn't have to. They're not coming to me for business. They're not looking to get me to give them something. They're not trying to get me as an account. They did it just because they're good people. And as a mortgage professional in your market that is going to be really, really hard pressed in this future state when push button clear to close happens, and consumer loyalty is going to be tough to keep, you really need to engineer into your business some time to take a breath. Don't work the process. Don't work the conveyor belt. And just show people that you care. And the littlest things, such as gift cards, and for them, it was more than little with what they did. But the littlest things, such as small gift cards, handwritten notes, impromptu text messages, video messages, or just a call to say hi, is going to have a major impact on your client capture and client conversion. And so again, guys, why I'm doing this live stream is our industry is drastically changing on the back end. And many of you are so busy racking up records, breaking W-2 records, production records, unit records, all kinds of records, that you're not in a position where you can take a pause and think about how you can prepare for that future state. The problem is, because it's happening on the back end, the train isn't slowing down. And it's going to come like that. It's going to happen in 2021, whether it's Q1 or Q2. We will be in a push button, get clear to close in 10-second environment. And when that happens, the game changes for us. And client capture and client conversion is going to change in the percentage of it, which means our lead bucket is going to need to change. And so with purpose, on purpose, we need to design ways to increase our conversion. And so in this, I talked about the network and building it out, value after the mortgage, showing that you care, having action steps as part of your communication process, and absolutely building a brand so people have that emotion that they know they're working with the best, just like I do with Apple. I just assume it's the best phone because they branded me, is going to have a huge impact in your business. So if any of you are watching this, I appreciate it. Hopefully this added some value to you. I will next week, I think it is, be doing a live stream that is scheduled with a gentleman named Mike Surgis. He runs our national builder division, and he's going to talk about the builder market that we're in right now, and tactics that people can use to increase their builder business. I think he's going to talk about product and how to leverage that product. So I hope you stay tuned and tune in for that. But again, if you're watching this, thanks, guys. Hopefully you got some value, and we'll be in touch.